Well, good afternoon. And it's the day before Thanksgiving, so I know there's probably a lot of men and women, as we were doing earlier, in the kitchen, sharing recipes, giving him a page. I'm taking a page, and you just pray it all turns out okay. So if you have the time now to watch this live as we do it, that's grand. If you have to make it back on the replay, that's awesome too. But it kind of came at a very apropos time that we have a conversation around our personal journey with our mindset and our philosophy on abundance and how that works. And in truth, we all on this, camera together right now are so rich. Even if you take the money totally aside and leave it, we all have warm homes to sleep in. We have cars to drive. We have jobs. Even if we have that, we have all the other ways that we make money. So we know that the blessings are there. But we're going to dive in just a little bit deep and talk about our mindset and answer some tough questions around money. So today I have my same three guys again. I'm so excited. So I have Hayden and Jim and Robert. And I was telling them earlier before we started this interview, Hayden always says the things he teaches on are the things that he is struggling the most with. And so as I was going through some questions and things that I wanted to ask, I realized that I didn't like some of the answers that I had. And so that tells me, of course, that I need to work on it more. And I think for all of us, it's painful to sit down and do, as my sister would say, it's the word that starts with B, a budget. I remember the first time she ever said that, she's like, oh my gosh, we're going on a budget. And so sometimes those budgets are extremely necessary to get to the next step, where we want to be. So, Hayden, I'm going to start with you again this time because I think the reason I do that is for someone at your age, I think you were born old. I think that's what has happened with you. You have a much older mindset. You have a lot of wisdom about you. And I think you just kind of start the platform and the conversation is such a good way for us to bounce back and forth and off on. So, one of my questions that I want to give you, Hayden, is when you were growing up, can you remember some of your earliest beliefs around money? Like,
Mm.
did it grow on trees? Um, it's flying out I always say, I open the window and the money's flying out. I say that a lot sometimes. So, what in your mind comes up as you think about in your early years, as you heard family talk and all of that? What was the conversations around money?
Yeah, this is exciting because I grew up in a network marketing family. And
Ah,
so I feel like I learned about money a little bit differently. I also say that coming from a farm family. So I
mm,
feel like there was two spectrums coming from that. Now I'm the oldest of seven, and my dad was the youngest of five. And
wow.
so very it was amazing being able to grow up on the family farm
Mm.
uh, and get the hard work in. A lot of still some of my best friends uh, from those days. I feel like our parents would just trade us for child labor. Um, that in a fun way. We had the best memories.
Yes. Yeah.
um, Also, I got to grow up in this environment where my parents were always surrounding themselves with
Mm,
people that saw things a little bit differently.
mhm,
Back in the day, it was product pickup nights before the internet
mm.
and drawing circles and showing the plan, but always dreaming. I always say I was either in the car listening to personal development or Leonard Skinner. And so was money was something that we didn't talk
Mhm.
a lot about. It was more from the sense of dream and you can create whatever you want.
Mm,
And so I never grew up knowing that if there was or that there was any sort of
mhm,
scarcity of money or resources. I got to, play the sports that I wanted to. I didn't really have to work a job until I was in college because that was kind of the rule. If I was busy with sports, didn't have to
Mhm.
get a job. But I think my perception around money was I was very open at a young age that it can be created in different ways, and residual income was just so happened to be the best way. And there was nothing wrong with trading, time for money. I think that's very, very important. But at a young age, I got to learn the leverage of it, leveraging time, effort, resources, people, networks, people that wanted to see things differently. And so I grew up with that in mind. And it wasn't until a few years ago where I actually really, you talk about the B word, budget. I really had to take that into consideration
Mhm.
and I would say realize how important that
Mhm.
was, regardless of how much was coming in or not. But it was I like a budget because there's intentionality behind everything,
Mhm.
and you get to be very intentional with where you put those resources, and based off of I think needs, based off of your beliefs, and then based off of and eventually wants as well.
Mhm.
But being able to have a budget, to be intentional with that, I believe that is rewarded, even though if we're not currently operating out of a budget, or if there's people watching this that aren't, that's okay. But I would say, like, really look at where that's going, and if that money is going to where your heart's being called, things that you're being called to, taking care of the family as men, being providers, and all of those things. So I would say I grew up with a very open-minded, abundant uh, center around money.
Cool. That's really cool. I never realized this. So I am one of seven also.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So those large families, for your parents not to have that conversation in the kitchen that you heard about money all the time, was amazing. So it's so fun to hear a totally different perspective. So Jim, over to you. Um, you literally grew in a lot of stages of history when money was very abundant. And as my mother would say, bread was a nickel, but there wasn't a nickel to be had. And so take us a little bit through your experiences with money as you were growing up and your mindset around that.
I don't know how far back you want me to go, but since I have swam in the Dead Sea before it got sick, I can go way back. No, seriously, I grew up in a very small community, and I mean very small, but it was alongside of an Indian reservation, the Native American reservation. And so I had occasion to go with my parents often into the reservation and see people living in what are known as hogans, made out of,
Mm,
you know, dirt and dirt floors, and
mhm,
no running water, no electricity. And so when I came back to the house that my father had made, literally by hand from an old barn into our first home, where where he had the property to build it on, and of course making his living in farming and planting, I saw hard work, but what I saw is that I had a home. It had running water after a while. We had an outhouse for the first while, and then we had electricity, which was even more incredible. But I took all those for granted, other than when I would visit my friends who didn't live in a home, and I had several. Uh, as far as I knew, my parents were rich.
mm,
I couldn't I couldn't understand why my neighbors weren't, but
mhm,
I knew we were because we had food, and often they would show up and need a little of it. And
mhm,
my parents were, you know, big-hearted, and not only share what they had, share more than they had
mhm,
occasionally. And I grew up with my mom. Literally, she had come through that, obviously, even before me, clear back in World War II, and she would make sure that the four of us kids had enough to eat and then asked if they wanted seconds. And I noticed she never sat down and ate with us,
Yeah.
but I'd also noticed that she did have a plate set out, and she'd always say, "Oh, mine's in the kitchen, I'll eat later." But if
Mhm.
somebody wanted seconds, suddenly there was enough for seconds for one or two of us. And then
Mhm.
I'd go in the kitchen and her plate would be empty.
Mhm.
So I do, you know, it was it was interesting when I went to get married. I said, "Mom, I found the girl I want to marry, but I haven't graduated college yet. I don't have a job. I've done a little part time here and there to pay tuition. And, should I wait to get married?" And she said, "No." She
Oh.
said, "You are smart enough to do both. There's
Mm.
lots of work out there. You just
Mhm.
have to work it out." And I said, "Really? You have enough confidence that I could do that? I'm 21 years old."
Mhm. Mhm.
And it did. It worked out great. My wife kept her job while she was going to college, and then I
Mhm.
got one also,
Mhm.
and worked our way through that. But then suddenly we had a family.
Mm.
And now it got a little dicier because at this point now I'm teaching and trying to raise four kids, five kids, six kids, and finally eight on a teacher's salary meant I had to go outside of the teaching environment and had two more
Mhm.
jobs to keep my hobby of teaching.
Yeah.
And that's what introduced me to leverage. That's
Mm.
what introduced me to you find somebody, and great mentors. Zig Ziglar was one of them. Help somebody else get what they need and watch what happens to your
Mhm.
income.
Yeah.
And then Jim Rohn was even beyond that of leverage and things that I could do. And although I had a problem with what I believed in my heart that maybe I didn't deserve riches
Mhm.
because I was supposed to be very satisfied with that's enough. And so I hit a ceiling that I could not break through. I would I had some self defeating behaviors as I started to go past what income I thought I deserved
Mhm. Yeah.
until I heard this sentence. Do you realize that every dollar you're paid represents somebody you have helped,
Mm.
especially in network marketing?
Mhm.
Mm.
And when that sank in, I says, I'm worth $1 million because I'm going to help a million people.
Mhm.
And when you have you know, a situation like we've discovered here, that you don't just think it might help people, you observe it every time you talk to somebody who's using what you've introduced to them, and their
Mhm.
life has gotten better
Better. Yeah.
in so many ways. So,
Mm.
yeah, uh,
Uh,
my so I've been poor and I've been rich. Rich is better
mhm.
for so many different reasons. And
Yes.
one of the
Yes.
things that I helped, I think, was my own children
Mhm.
not getting stuck in scarcity.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And suddenly abundance was great.
Yeah.
And if you were willing to work for it and bless some other people, you would and could do whatever you set your mind to, especially if we had a good partner, which we decided we'd
Mm.
invite on our faith based background
Mhm.
to be our partner in all the work we do.
Yeah. Mm. Thank you for all of that. My gosh.
Mm.
I feel like we maybe sat in each other's houses a little bit. So, Robert, your story is a little bit different. So, you had a father that was a blue collar worker, and then your mother discovered that trading time for money was really challenging, and she found a way to do it differently. So, tell us a little bit about what you felt about money growing up. Like, what were the things that you heard?
Yeah, it's what's interesting is what I thought I my belief was around money. Come to find out, wasn't my belief around money. And let me fill the gaps in for you. So yes, back when I was elementary and then on junior high, mom was a teacher and then special ed, and then she worked in an office setting at the same school. We had the whole school, 12th grade through kindergarten was one big hallway.
Yeah.
It was a big school, obviously not,
Mhm.
and so it was interesting. Everybody knew everybody, especially if your mom worked at the school, so you couldn't get away with anything. So
Yes.
um, that being said, I never was at a loss for connecting a work ethic to money. That never was really the problem. It might have been part of the challenge later on, but that was, yes, dad worked for the Kansas City Southern. He was a brakeman and then a conductor on the freight train. And my ideal of a responsible, dad continues to be a beautiful mentor and role model to me. Responsible, honorable um, man who respected others regardless of their race, background, income, etc. Mom was the same way. So
Mhm.
again, very, very honored to have those principles and beliefs established within my heart early on. And then when it comes to money, I like many of us did, I grew up thinking, well, college was the solution. We're at a paradigm now in our society where there's different pathways to abundance. That's
Mhm.
only, education is only one. Back then, it was like if you're a responsible, mature, successful after high school, you're gonna go to college or
Mhm.
at least get in trade school, whatever it was. And so I lasted about 2 years, switched majors about 4 times, and when I finally said I'm going to find my way, I went as far as you could in the states up to the northern border of Montana and Canada, and so about as far as you could get away from where I grew up.
Mhm.
And so I bailed out of school, ended up doing what I love. I was trading some income for teaching, leading people rock climbing and whitewater rafting and mountaineering, and I was having a blast and living in some of the most beautiful parts of the lower 48. And about 2 or 3 years into that, I realized that I was helping everybody else travel the planet, have these
Mhm.
beautiful adventures, but I was still tied to dollars. So I ended up in massage therapy and the healing arts because I saw a way to, it was come to find out it was still trading time for money, but it was a little more money than I was making as a outdoor
Mhm.
mentor.
Mhm.
And the first month in my massage therapy schooling, I was reintroduced to direct sales. My about 4 weeks into my what I thought was my career path, I was reintroduced to something that was time leverage,
Mhm.
happened to be network marketing. And my mom, what I the other dot connector was when I ended up in junior high and high school. Mom had found a pathway in the Pink Company, Mary Kay. Mary Kay Ash led a beautiful company,
Mhm.
mostly
Yes.
women, but mom was able. I fell in love back in junior high. I saw my mom build an income and travel and uplift and validate other women and men. She created her income by doing that. I said, wow, there's a business model where you can create this time leverage and income coming in by uplifting and empowering other people. What could be more magical than that? So I never had any baggage. It was the opposite. But then I went my way, and there I am in massage therapy school, got involved in direct sales alongside the healing art journey. And like Jim said, and Hayden both, I sought out key role models, mentors who taught me some of the basic principles and fundamentals. And then it took me a couple companies and ventures to find one that I really aligned with.
Mhm.
And then that's where I met Jim and Hayden both, was in a journey of about like 15, 16 years journey. And it was beautiful. But long story short, it was in that venture where we all ran together for a number of years where I came face to face with
Mhm.
my belief around money was I didn't think money was important.
Mhm.
I went to a series of workshops, and my biggest my biggest pivotal moment was when I was this gentleman right here. His name is T. Harv Eker,
Mhm.
and he taught me some principles around wealth and abundance, that I could be a good person. I could be actually a person God would be proud of and have wealth, because it was tied to my choices around what I did with that money, whether I'm a good steward or not. So I went from being a money monk, T. Harv calls it, to being somewhere between a spender and a saver. But anyway, so I was able to slowly increase my capacity to receive money, and it took some doing, because the universe, which I believe is God, abhors, does not like a vacuum. And so when I create a space to receive more money and open my mind and heart to it, then lo and behold, abundance and wealth pours into that space. And T. Harv is one of those individuals that taught me that. And I did learn one last thing before we move on, that I did learn that when I talk with other people about elevating their abundance, income, money coming into the household, most people on the planet cannot envision in reality more than double what they've ever earned in their life. If you look at somebody's income and their earning history and career path as an adult, you look at the biggest year they ever had income wise. Most people, if you talk anything much beyond double of what they've already made in 1 year, you're already pushing them into a false paradigm that they really can't believe or see yet. So we have to incrementally introduce that to people, including myself. So there you go, honey.
Thank you.
Very good.
You know, the way you guys had bits and pieces from each parts of your story, it brings a question to my mind when we talk to people about our path, and would they like to join us on this journey? And the money potential is quite substantial. There are those, and I think probably in some ways, maybe except for Hayden, I think the rest of us have probably struggled a little bit with guilt about, well, if I make a lot of money, then people will think I'm XYZ, or people are going to ask me more, if I'm going to give to this or give to that sort of thing. So sometimes as the abundance does start to come, there is some guilt that comes with that. Like, for instance, Robert, when you talked about, and Jim talked about a little bit, not deserving to be able to have this much money or to make this much money. We always see the glory and not the story, as we all say. And we have those people that come into our businesses and we tell them they can make this much money, but they've never made more than maybe $12 an hour. So sometimes we paint a picture that is so great, they can't even begin to embrace it. So as leaders, how do you teach your teams and your people the abundant mindset? What books do you refer them to? Your secrets that you may have, even at one time thought that you didn't deserve to make this much money or whatever. I know in one of our companies, one of our biggest years was, we had about 2 years of almost $400,000 a year. You can do a whole lot on $400,000. When you have $400,000, you don't have emergencies anymore. And so as you begin to position all of these statements with people that you're working with about this is the potential, this is what's available, how do you do that? The last thing we want them to do is to have that fear of failure. So how do you take that and put that into good things, Hayden? That's a lot in that question, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's really by, what I've found is just by asking questions, like not what people want, but what would be significant for them. I think we've always seen, we've seen the stats. What would, an extra $500 would do a lot for 80% of the families out there, or people that are looking at foreclosure or paying car payment, house, whatever it may be. An extra $500 we know statistically is very significant. my goal in this and what I share with everybody is that I want to show people how to earn a residual income that's going to meet or exceed their residual bills.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get to put, how much does it cost every month for the house, the water, the electricity, the things that we have to pay for, whether we have a job or not, the bills come in, right? I call those are the residual bills. And so asking people what that number is for them, and let's draw out a plan for that. So, like you say, most people can't imagine making double of whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody would love to do that, but to actually, everyone believes that they're working hard, right? So if they think, well, I got to work double as hard, like that's a myth. We don't have to work double as hard or twice as hard. We get to work smarter and leverage the time, effort, resources. So I think it just comes back to, I paint a vision based off of what would be significant for that person, and then I want to help grow their mindset so that they can stretch that vision, and we can set some, really realistic goals for what it's going to take to make that significant amount every week or every month or a year, whatever that looks like for them. And then let's get to that point, and then let's stretch it. Because by the time they get to that point, they're probably in some sort of momentum. They probably have some sort of other people, especially in our profession, that they have helped that are also going after their significant amount of income that they are looking for. And so I think it's taking those just step by step, but I don't want to pour, my expectations on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to help them match what their expectations are. But I'm always going to I'm going to paint a big vision so that people feel like, okay, I can fit within that, but also to let them know what's possible 3, 5, 10 years down the road.
Wow, great answer. So as you are building this vision and you are showing what's possible, we've always said this isn't a hard business, but there are times that it does become a little bit challenging. It is an easy business, and there are times it is a hard business, and there's times it's not even easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have this person that is trying so hard and you're building this belief with them, and their results are not matching their effort. So, Jim, how do you handle that? How do you keep the energy, the confidence, the belief, that's high when they're doing all of this effort, but yet it's not coming to fruition yet?
Wow.
And we've all had that. We've
Yes.
all had
Of course.
that.
This industry probably stretches that one
Yes.
some of the most. The belief that I deserve it and I can do it is usually where it comes up short and what is available for most of us. If we've worked a traditional trading time for money, and then suddenly you learn about leverage and you think you understand it, but it's still going to take time. There's 2 or 3 things. If I really had somebody that was a student and I was truly trying to mentor them, I would make sure that they had reached out and found a copy of Jim Rohn's Network Marketing CD. It is the law of the harvest and time. You plant a seed, okay, you come out the next day and water it and weed it and do everything, and 2 weeks later there's still nothing showing. You're going to get a little discouraged.
Yeah.
If they can understand that concept, probably Hayden nailed it. If you've been a farmer, you plant those seeds knowing, and that's what I know now, because I have planted those seeds and watched them mature and bear fruit, and suddenly, instead of making $40,000 a year and thinking I was well paid, it increased to multiple 6-figure income, like was mentioned. That is mind-blowing, and
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you deserved it too. So I had more problem with getting that kind of money paid than when I had the opposite problem. That's not mine.
Not me.
I don't know if it's nothing's popping up on mine.
Okay,
You just gotta love these
I
cell
think
phones.
my time's up. That's right. Um,
Maybe it's on the computer. It's not me. I don't know.
is it actually the video itself?
Well, whoever that was, it's
Oh,
We'll continue on. Just real quick. The answer is there's things that you know and there's things that you trust and hope. And the
Yes.
new person has to have the trust and hope.
Yeah.
And that vision casting is what I would suggest I
Mm-hmm.
am fairly good at. And I take it in smaller bites.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, to really max this comp plan we're familiar with, there's a whole bunch on the right and a whole bunch on the left. And if I started explaining that to them, they'd go, well, there's no way. You got to
Mm-hmm.
be a unicorn to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But if I
Yeah.
say two on the right and two on the left, they go, what? And then how much do I have to spend per month to just qualify it? Well,
Yeah.
110 for one and 220 for two.
Mm-hmm.
What? I can do both of those, and those are believable. And you
Yeah.
build that faith and that confidence a
Mm-hmm.
little by little to where they see, okay, if I got paid $100 this month and I
Mm-hmm.
can make it to 200 next, and then I still have that team I built and I do it one more month, where am I going to be? Just
Yeah.
start putting the numbers together and walk them through. And yeah,
Yeah.
with confidence, having been there, I can do that. I think
Yes.
that's my answer to the question.
Yeah. Yeah. I could not agree more. You know, Robert, if there's one thing that I watched you do over and over and over again in the course of our 30 years together, whether it's a business or teaching somebody how to ski on these long classic skis that are only about this wide, and the snow is quite icy and all of that. I've seen you take people on mountains and get them up and get them down and believing that they can do that. So, as you do this with a business, what is the thing that I'm going to answer the question for you. You always believe that someone will and can build a substantial business until they prove you differently. So on the days that it's hard, on the days that like you want to kick like the dog or whatever, like how do you flip that mindset? Maybe you've had that phone call and I'm not making any money. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Nobody's putting anybody underneath me. Wah, wah, wah. Like, tell me about that.
okay. Well, I think Jim's probably smiling, and so are Hayden. These are two individuals that they get a call from me. First of all, and I would probably call Hayden if I was struggling. Well, I take that back because Jim is there's a different alignment. Those of you who understand our profession. That being said, I'm so close to both these individuals, and there's a couple other in my
Mm-hmm.
close network that I unconditionally trust, and they trust me, and we could even pray together. I've called Jim between crying, dancing, celebrating, and praying, all the above. And I'm only been working with Hayden a few weeks, but I'm sure we'll get to the other emotions. But you know, anyway, so I think number one is have that trust circle, for lack of a better way of saying it. One of our dear friends up in Canada, she calls it her love posse. I'm a male, so I'm more masculine is my support team, whatever. But anyway, and number two, I have a secret board of directors,
Mm-hmm.
and I've done several videos on this through the years. I learned this from one of our mentors, Andy Andrews, meaning about three of my people know they're on my board of directors. About
Mm-hmm.
two of them are in heaven now. They're not even here on the planet. and the other three are individuals I haven't even met, but I've met them via their material.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have these trusted who we share our values and we share our beliefs. And
Mm-hmm.
I go in my mind, I put the right music on, I get the right environment. I go to this mountain meadow, these big, huge log. It's a log cabin. There's a petrified table, and I have these 7 individuals on my secret board of directors that I could look them in the eyes. These loving, unconditional, trusting, validating eyes, and I can ask them, obviously metaphorically. So the real life trust circle, the secret metaphorical circle of trust, and number 3, number 3, if I look at, if you could see my office walls, I know sometimes Joy probably thinks I'm crazy, but Jim has seen my walls in my office. All my affirmations, I have my core fundamental beliefs and my things that validate spiritual laws of abundance. I just have to glance on my walls and I can ground myself again in why I'm here.
Yeah.
And then I can also, anytime and on a good day, multiple times that day, remind myself that, God made me for a purpose. There's a reason I'm still breathing. There's a reason I'm still here. There's a reason that He poured these gifts and talents into my DNA even before I came out into the physical world. So I just remind myself of that. And I thank my Father, Heavenly Father, in advance for helping me boldly step into those talents and that calling and that purpose.
Yeah.
So I do, and days I'm struggling, I do all those steps.
Yes.
Maybe within 30 minutes or maybe stretched out throughout the day. And in some days, if it's really a tough day, I will call my buddies and then turn on Braveheart and just watch an epic movie with my hero and then open the door again the next morning. So again, and the last thing I'll share, and I share that Jim shares it back to me a lot, is Robert, give yourself a heaping serving of grace.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. I think for all of us, it's not always easy to ask for help. If I could have a room of 100 people and say, how many of you is it hard to ask for help? My hand would be the one going up first. I mean, I will stay lost before I will pull into a restaurant or a gas station and ask for directions because I just know I can figure it out. And Robert immediately will pull over and I'm like, don't do that. They're going to know we're lost. So what is that even about? It's about pride is what it's about. And so it's just such a blessing that you find those people that you can have these hard and heart-to-heart conversations with that if you're struggling, somebody else is as well. You're not the only person in the whole world that ever struggled with this.
And it's people, they won't judge you. They know who you are and how you show up in life.
Yes, exactly. So just to shift gears a little bit. So we have all been in a position where our incomes were pretty substantial and life was rolling along pretty good. And when we were all, in that setting, that's where I really learned about the responsibility of having, of course, it's not a lot to multimillionaires, but of having more than I needed just to live on. I knew there was that responsibility of helping others. And so I think as we grow into these incomes, so what do you believe, Hayden, is the responsibility of entrepreneurs that produce substantial incomes? Like, how do we use that money?
We use it for good. We go down a lot of different paths here, but one of my favorite books, it talks about, leaving a legacy and, leaving our generations, leaving them a step ahead or maybe 10 steps ahead of where we started. That can be implanted on down through knowledge, but also resources as well, and how we utilize money as a tool and as an energy to make our families better, make our communities better, make the causes that are, have been placed on our hearts better, because it's really, yes, we can volunteer our time and do those things, but we can multiply so much more by being able to financially give. And when I learned that, it drove me even deeper. There was a deeper reason. I think at least when I started this business, it was like for survival. And it was like, how am I going to provide for myself and my family?
Yeah.
And then once that started happening, like you're saying, then the abundance starts coming in. You go, okay, now what do I want to give to? And now I realize that I should always be giving, in a way, whether I feel like I have enough or not, because that's also going to reciprocate. So I think we're going to get blessed with more as we continue to bless others, and do that first before it goes to the fun stuff, I would say, so to speak. So it's always coming from a good place.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that is so true. It's such a balance, I think, that we learn as we balance it with, you do have some of the fun stuff, and then you have the stuff that makes your heart sing because you see what you've been able to do. So Jim, you, I know, have taught probably hundreds of sermons, if not thousands of sermons, probably around giving. And so tell us a little bit about that.
First of all, you have to fill your own cup. And that's a principle that sometimes you don't realize your cup is ran empty. And if you don't know that it's abundance that you can tap into and have that cup get filled financially, if we're talking on that realm right now, which we are, then you're sometimes going to, in the attitude of serving others, unserve yourself and those that you care for the most, which would be your own family, and care for them. Money has not been a motivator for me. That's interesting too.
Yes.
But at the same time, if I don't pay attention to it, it owns me. And then I find I'm going the opposite direction, and now many people are stepping up to help me, and I want a legacy that's the other way.
Yes.
I truly do. And that's why I'm so excited with what we're doing right now, because I've been there and done that. So all we got to do now that we've got this vehicle is take a hold of it and literally bless all them and myself at the same time. And I look forward to that, because it also shows others that they can do it too.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a program that's duplicatable and not a big learning curve to just start earning.
Yeah.
And that belief grows every step of the way they go. And, it's like having an income. They pay you to go through a personal development program.
Yes.
Because I've been through a whole bunch of personal development programs around money. And there's nothing that teaches you better than having it, and then discovering you don't have it again, and missing that, and then going back and making a living the old way and going, boy, do I miss residual income. I just now realize just how important that is. And that one or two keys plus two things. One, start small. How would it be if you could not make just what you're making now, but be able to pay off your car early? And what about, that getting out of debt is such a relief. I mean, there is something true to that I'm out of debt yell.
Yes.
It's all that pressure that takes away our abilities, actually, and makes us start doubting ourselves. But that's the vehicle we're now attached to, literally. And gosh, I could go so many places with this very question, but just an ending. The way if I get discouraged and I'm going to kick the wall, especially if I'm talking to some person that I see much more ability than they're showing, and then now they're complaining and they don't see them making it, I go recharge myself, and it's really easy. It only takes 2 hugs from 1 or 2 of my grandkids to remind me of my why.
Yes.
Then
Yes.
I can go back to them and say, when was the last time you visited your why? How bad did when we had this first discussion, you said, I really want it really, really bad. And I know if your help, I'm going to make it. And I'm still here. And you're now saying, gee, I'm still not making it.
Yeah.
Are you sure? They say that your why should make you cry,
Yeah.
but that's a weak one. Your
Mhm.
why should put you into action.
Mm.
If it's not strong enough to put you into action, you're just going to sit there and dream, versus
Mhm.
dreaming again is good. But if you
Yeah.
don't apply what you're dreaming for,
Yeah.
the dream stays a dream versus reality. And what you focus on grows, and it will
Yeah.
grow.
It will
It may
grow.
take a little more time for some than others, but it's there
Mm.
for us to be aware of if we
So
choose
true.
then.
Yeah.
And it's our choice.
Yes. Thank you. So, Robert, I have a really good question for you. So, how do you stay generous and giving without slipping into pleasing people or over giving?
Well, I've stepped into overgiving, and I've stepped into both those
We have.
potential landmines. I'm sure I'll
Yeah.
step into them again because I'm human. Um, so you're asking me, how do I balance that better? Is that what you're asking?
How do you balance that? Because when I remember very well when we started making money, our phone rang off the wall with people wanting us to give to this and give to this and give to this.
Right.
And we were like, giving, giving, giving. And it's kind of a funny story with Robert and I. We had given so much to to an organization one year that I forgot to hold back the tax
Yeah,
money.
we struggled paying taxes because we had given so much
Yes,
to a couple
yes,
beautiful causes.
yes.
So,
And so we only did that once. And so thankfully somehow we made the tax payment. I don't know how it worked, but we somehow made
well,
that.
we know why, because we
Yes,
activated
yes,
that law.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. But we were so grateful that we were able to give, and it made us feel so good to give to this organization, and it was all based around children. But before we realized it, we seriously had overgiven. So do you have just a couple of little tidbits on that, Robert, to share with someone?
Well, I mean, the practical response to that would be to be smart about it, and if it's not one of your strengths, which it obviously wasn't one of our strengths, and it's still not one of our strengths. We found other people who it is their strength. Like how many years did we have our wonderful CPA? He's gone on to heaven now, but how many years?
Oh my gosh, 18,
18
19,
years.
20 years? Yeah.
Yeah, so we found somebody that was their expertise and their strength.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
was, I think that's the simplest answer I could give, and I
Mhm.
highly recommend other people, because and I'll close with this on this question. I had an epiphany. It was many years ago, probably, but the epiphany was that we're so often taught and conditioned to honor our strengths, but spend so much time trying to make our weaknesses our strengths. And the epiphany I heard at this workshop kind of threw me upside down for a minute until I said, that can't be true. That can't be true. It was my old beliefs, and what they were teaching in their books and their lecture as well in the workshop was that, okay, why don't we instead expand and strengthen our strengths and delegate our weaknesses? And it was like such a simple concept,
Yeah.
because if we just let our strengths remain where they are and then try to bolster up what inherently are our weaknesses, it's not a bad thing, it just is, then
Mhm.
our strengths will just simply become maybe mediocre,
Yeah.
and our weaknesses will eventually get to mediocrity. And here we are. And it just, once I thought it through, it made a whole lot of sense. And I'm obviously still working on that, but and always, one thing else I learned to replace
Mhm.
but with and I'm always striving to honor and elevate the strengths that I've had since birth and since and life
Yeah.
experience,
Mhm.
and leverage more of those areas that I'm not so
Mhm.
strong in, and give myself permission to do that. So hope that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. Well, you guys, I have kept you here about 50 minutes, I think, or so. So I think we may have to break some of this up into parts. But I think probably for every one of us, it's made us pause a little bit, reflect a little bit, and think about the way we do feel about money. And some things are so positive with how we feel, and some things we have to just work on. And I always say, kind of like Robert said, if you don't do it well, find somebody that does it well and pattern after them, spend time with them, ask for help from them. Our I will never forget this. I struggled every year. It was tax time, and it was like a month of my life. And somebody finally said to me, "Get someone to do it." And I was like, "Well, what if they?" And they're like, "Just get someone. Just try it. Just get someone." And you guys, it was $50 a month. That's all the man charged us for 20 years was $50 a month. And he took the worst experience of everybody's life paying taxes to about literally a 30-minute phone call. And so when I think about how it was my albatross around my neck. And so whatever your albatross is, think about how you can find somebody to help you do that. Because if you work this business, the money will come. People's lives will be changed on a daily basis, and you will literally be someone they are forever grateful for because you changed their life. Our life has been changed forever. Hayden and Jim's life has been changed forever. We have been to places and lived in places like that you just dream about, and it was part of our monthly life and will be again and again and again. But I can tell you that as we look at all of those filters that come into us, that maybe are not always so healthy in how we think, the sooner for me and all of us that we work on those things and get them resolved, I truly believe this. Then the Lord sends that abundance over and over again. Because if you can handle, say, 10 million, you can handle $10. You can handle 100. You can handle every bit that gets to that big number is the small number that you learn to handle on your way all the way up. And it just becomes, I will never forget this. I was asked one time, it was in one of our classes, Robert, and I was asked, what happens when you begin to make the money? Like, how is your life different? And I said, I haven't had to balance my checkbook, but the emergencies are no longer emergencies. And I touched on that a moment ago. If the car breaks, the money is there. It takes off the stress. Husbands and wives aren't fighting. The kids aren't hearing it. It changes everything about your life. But at the core of all that is still who you are. So that's an interesting path that we could all go down at some time. So as we wrap this up, and I have to tell y'all, I learn so much every week when we work on these subjects, and I learn what I need to do differently and how I need to spend more attention to a certain area of my life. So I know if I'm feeling that way, there's got to be everybody else out there feeling that way as well. So I want to encourage you, give you a little call to action here. I think everything we've talked about could be summarized in one word. And I think that word is grow. And we grow into everything we do, everything we do. And so if you have an interest in learning more about this, if you have an interest in learning how it's happened for all of us, that we have used residual income as a huge part of our life, just send us a message with grow in the text, and we'll know to get back to you. and give you some information on that. And so it is a beautiful journey, a beautiful journey. And it can happen to you just like it happened for all of us. So thank you for joining us. And thank you, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you. Please drop the word grow down in there somewhere, and we'll get back to you. Bye.
Thank you, Joy.
You're welcome.